went ahead and looked at view functions, and we discussed how they take in requests and then return HTTP responses. Now, templates are just HTML documents that we may render within our view functions. So in this video, I'm going to be walking you through templates and the different concepts involved while using templates in Django. So let's get started. So we're going to start by rendering a simple HTML template within a view. So to do that, what I'll do is to go back to our code right here. So we have some of the view functions we've created. For example, our index function. So right now we are returning an HTTP response that basically creates an object that it returns to us. And in this case, we are just returning text. But what we're going to do in this case is to actually return an HTML document. So to do that, what we need to first do is to specify where this file is going to be. So I'll open up our project and then go within our posts app. And what I'll do first is to create our templates folder. So I'll begin by saying templates. And after doing this, then I'll create a simple file, which is going to be our HTML file. And it's going to be called the index.html file. Now this index.html file is going to have a HTML that we're going to render. So I'll basically create a simple HTML file right here. So this is some boilerplate code I've created with VS Code. And I'm just going to simply call this our Django template. So just right in here, I'll come and what I'll do is write a simple heading. It's going to be an H1. And this H1 is going to have the text hello world. So I'm going to save this and then we shall go back to our view function, and then what we shall do is to change our index view function so that it basically returns this index.html page. So to do this, we are going to replace our HTTP response object with our render function. So render function is a shortcut function provided to us by Django. And what it does is to return an HTTP response, but this HTTP response renders an HTML page instead of just returning for us just a plain text message. So the first thing we're going to do is to import the render function. So we shall just come at the top. Actually, it's already imported for us. So we have from Django the shortcuts. We're going to import render. So then we'll have to replace our index view function with this. So I'll just come right here and then remove our HTTP response. So in this case, I'll write that we're going to render. So the render function takes in an argument, which is going to be our request object as a first argument. So I'll begin by providing the request object, and then I'll provide the template name. Now in this case, you have to point to where our template is. So now keep in mind that we have called our folder templates, and this is the convention. So Django will always look in the folder of templates and then be able to locate where the actual template is. So what we've done in this case is to specify that we need the file index.html, and this file is going to actually be located within our templates folder. So since it's not in any other directory, we shall just have to access it from the root project. So we'll just come and say that we're going to access the index.html page. And then we are going to save this, hoping that our server is still running. We're going to go back to our browser, and when we try to access this, then we're going to actually get our HTML. So let's go to our browser and check this out. So when I go to our browser right here, I'm going to go to our root URL. And in this case, we see that our HTML page has been rendered. So HTML pages are not actually just HTML. Sometimes you may want variables from models or some variables from our backend. Now this is where templating engines come into play. So templating engine is one way that we use to express logic from our view functions into our HTML template. For example, let's say we wanted this name to be dynamic. So let's say we wanted to create a name, but wanted this name to be dynamic. So let's say we wanted to provide that name as a query parameter or as a URL parameter. So what you can do is to actually make it a variable that you can provide or provide a default. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll come back to our views. I'm going to go to views.py, and in this case what I'll have to do is to create our name. So just like we did for this example, I'm just going to copy this, and what we shall have here, I'm just going to come and say that we are going to have our name being equal to what we shall get from our request as our name, or world, the string world. So when I save this, I am going to check our server, it's still running. So once we provide this and want to access it within our template, then you have to provide a context. So context is a dictionary of variables that we may want to access on our template. So for example, in this case, we've created a name, but we want to access this name on our front end or our template. We may need to provide this name in our context dictionary. So I'm going to come right here and I'll create a context dictionary. So I'll create a dictionary which is going to be our context. So this context is going to have the name that we shall use as on our front end or our template. So we shall have that context name, and it's going to actually be the key in this case. So shall say it's going to be the name, and then we shall provide that name as our name. Now all we need to do is to pass that context within our render function as the third argument. So I'll just come right here and say that we are actually going to have our context as our third argument. Now when I save, hoping that our server is still running, we are safe. I'll head over to our browser, and when you head over to our browser, in this case, sorry for that, in this case what we're going to do is when I refresh, for the first time we're going to see that we're going to have hello world, because now our name is world. But let's say we provided our name, so I'll say slash and then question mark. I'll provide our name as, let's say, Jonah. So let's say we provided our name as Jonathan. So in this case it's actually not working. Let's see where we're going wrong. So we have name, which is actually name or gets this, and we don't actually have this name in our template yet. So what is actually returning is just our static hello world message. Now we're going to use a templating syntax that we are going to use to bring variables from our front end or carry out some logic using our data on our front end. So we're going to use a special syntax. So I'm just going to write two curly braces, and within here I'll provide our name. So when I provide this name is actually going to come from our view function instead. So it's still going to be a static name just like we've been having. It's going to be coming dynamically from our view function within our context. So when I save this and go back to our browser right here and refresh, in this case you see that our name is being picked from our URL and it's actually being rendered on our front end or our template. So let's say we remove this name. When you go back to our root endpoint, right now we see that we're actually having our world string being returned to us as our name. So what is confusing about this templating syntax is the way we write it most of the time. But let's take it step by step. So right now we have a name that we've been able to render within our template. Now let's say we also wanted to loop through all our posts that we created right here in our views, our dummy database of posts right here. So let's say I wanted to loop over all these. So what you can do is to actually use a for loop within our template, and then you'll be able to dynamically render some HTML elements with this kind of data from our backend. So to do that, what we shall have to do first is to provide our posts within a context. So I'll just come within our index HTML or within our index view function in this case, and what I'll do is to provide our posts, and these posts are going to be posts. And now that we have these posts, then we have them in our context. So this means we can actually access them on our index.html page. So for me, I normally use a special VS Code extension that can make life easy for me when I'm dealing with templating language or when I'm dealing with the Django templating language. And that extension is called the Django extension. So when I go to my installed extensions, I have the Django extension, and it's basically a collection of snippets for Django templates as well as some other Django functions. So head over to our extensions part and install that extension, as it will be so helpful when you're writing your Django template snippets. So from that, so what we're going to actually do is to go to our index.html. Now that we have our posts added to our context, we're going to actually access these posts in our index.html. So for every post that we have in our dictionary, what we're going to do is to render the title, the author, as well as the ID of that specific post in our HTML template. So what I can do is to remove our name for now. So let's say I'm going to create an H1, and this H1 is going to be list of posts. So what I'm going to do is to write a simple for loop. Now if you have the Django extension installed, all you'll have to do is to say for, and then it will complete the tag for you, just like you see here, hence making your life easier. So in this case, we want to loop through each of the posts, so I can say for post in posts. All we can do is to return a simple h2. So I'm actually going to return an h2, and this h2 is going to have our post title. Now instead of writing our double curly braces, all I can just do is say var, and then Django will complete for me the double curly braces. And now we want to access the post title, so I can just come and say post dot title. And when I save this, now hoping that our server is running, actually didn't even need to check because this is our HTML template. So when you go back to our UI right here, or our template, when you refresh, we now see a list of posts, and it's rendering all the posts dynamically from our view function. So let's go ahead and also render the other information. So we can do the same thing for, let's say, the author. So I can write a paragraph here and say by, let's say, the author. So I can make this bold and then provide our author. So I can say post dot author. When I save this, I can go ahead and refresh, and now we have the authors of the specific posts. Now we can even add the IDs, so I can come right in here, and let's say I can add the post ID. So I'm just going to add var and then say post dot ID. So right in here I can provide some separation, and when I refresh, right now we see the post of ID1 with the title and then the author. So this is basically showing us how we can be able to display our data dynamically using our templates. Now this is just a simple part that we've covered. There are a lot of template tags out there, just like we're going to be seeing in the next videos, but let's go ahead and look at another concept. Now the other concept we're going to look at is template inheritance. So for example, if we are to navigate to different parts of our application, we shall need some way of sharing the different layouts within these templates. For example, we have our home page right here, but we cannot navigate to another template. So let's go ahead and actually create some other templates. So what you can do is to go to our views.py right in here in our posts app. So I'm just going to actually close this right here. So this is actually going to be minimized. So I'm going to create a simple view function. So I can actually just come right here, and when I say view, I can actually just write view, and it will autocomplete for me because now I have Django. So I'm just going to call this about, and then let's say this is going to take in a request, which is going to be your type HTTP request. Now here, what I'll do is to return. So in this case, I'll return render, and then I'll specify that we're going to take in our request object as well as our template, which shall call about.html. Now within about.html, I'm actually going to also create one. So let's say we're just going to create a services page. So this services page is going to have request, and then what we shall do is to return. In this case, we shall return render and then our request. Then we shall also return our services page. So right now we have 3 HTML templates that we're actually rendering. Now what we can do is to basically go ahead and create these templates. So I'll go within our templates folder right here, and then I'll create our about.html. I'll also create our services.html. And what you shall need here is some HTML. So I'm just going to call this services. And then what I'm going to actually provide here, I'm actually going to provide a services as our heading, so it's actually going to be services page. And we shall do the same thing for our about page. So I'm just going to create the same HTML. So we'll actually call this about, and then right in here I'm going to provide an H1, and this will be our about page. So once you have this, then the next thing is going to be to navigate to the different parts of these of our pages. So I'll go to our front end or our template that we've rendered here, which is our index.html. So right now we don't have a way of navigating to the other pages, but let's say if we went to the about and the services, we have actually not created URLs for them. So I'm just going to go to our urls.py, and then what I'll do is to create extra URLs for them. So I'll minimize that. I'll create a path, and this is actually going to be for our about. So we shall attach this to a view. So I'll say views.about, and then let's say we provide the name as our posts about. So once we have this, then we can do the same thing for our services. So I'll just simply go ahead and copy this, and once I have this, then I can just come right here, provide this route as services, and once I have this, then I'll be able to access the view function specific to that specific route. So it's going to be services, and now I have to also change the name to services. Alright, so now that we have this means that we can actually navigate to these URLs. So for example, if I went here and said localhost 8000/about, it's actually going to navigate to the about page. The same thing for our services page. So if we go to our services page right here, it's actually going to take us to our services page. So things are actually working. Now let's go ahead and look at how we can navigate to these different parts of our page using anchor tags. So let's say if I went to our home or our index.html page, what I'm going to do is to create a simple header. So this header, and this header is actually going to have links that are going to lead us to the different parts of the application. Now Django provides for us special tags that can help us to pass in URLs into anchor tags so that you can be able to navigate to somewhere on clicking these links. Now what I'm going to do is to provide that. So using general, I can just come and say URL, and then provide the name that we use in our URL patterns. Now in this case, what we have is our posts urls.py. So I'm just going to close some of this. So I'm also going to close this. Now when we have our URLs, all we shall need is the names that we use for those specific URL patterns. So in this case, I am going to basically provide our posts home, and this will be for our home. So I'm just going to come and paste that in, and then provide home. And once we have that, then I'll also do the same thing for our about. So this is actually going to be URL, and in this case we shall have the name as posts about. So this is actually going to be for our about page, and once we have that, then we shall have the same thing for our URLs for services. So I'm just going to come and also copy this and paste it in. So I'm just going to come right here and paste it in. Now in this case we shall just have services. Now when I go ahead and save this, what I can do is to actually go to our home page. So I'll just come right here, and when I go to our localhost 8000, we now see the different links, and when we click these links, so this actually takes us to our home page. This will take us to our about, and when you go back to our services, you can still navigate to our services. Now problem is, if you want this shared across all these pages, what we actually need to do is to go ahead and copy all those links and paste them in the different HTML templates. Now that's kind of weird, because then it will mean that for all the 100,000 pages that we shall create with the same layout, we'll have to write them the same way. But thanks to template inheritance, we don't have to actually do that. So we shall create a base or a layout template that these are actually going to inherit from. So we shall have the same layout, but we shall not have to write the same HTML for every page. So to do that, I'm going to head over to our code right here, and what I'm going to do is to head over to our templates. Now I'm going to create a new file, and this new file is going to be our base.html. So this base.html template is actually going to be our main layout template, and this main layout template is the one that we shall share across those pages that shall share that specific layout. So to do that, I'm just going to come and copy what we actually have that's common to all pages. Now in this case, what we have is actually the HTML header, and I shall paste that in here. So once we have this, then we actually need also the closing body tag and the HTML tag. Now come and paste this here. So once you have this, you can even have a footer of sorts. So I'm just going to come right here, and so I'm going to come here, and let's say I provide a copyright. So I'll say and copy, and then so in this case we shall say Django beginners, and then say 2022. So right now it's 2022. So what you can do is to actually provide all the content within these tags. So we're going to use special tags that are called the block tags, and what these do is to dictate where in the layout the parts of the pages are going to be. So in this case, what we shall do is to provide our block tag. So I'll use Janeiro for that, and right here we can give our block a name. So let's say it's actually going to be the content. So in between these block tags is where our content for every page is actually going to be. So after doing this, then what we can do is to actually share this layout across all the pages that we have. So to do that, I'll just come to index.html. So now index.html has its content, but let's say if we want this content to have the layout that we have in our base.html, we shall have to come and use the extends tag and then specify which layout we want. So in this case it's the base.html template, and what we need is to specify our block tags and then use the same name we use for our block content. So I'll just come right here and drop these block content tags, and now the next thing is actually going to be to include our content. So I'll just come right here and provide this. So when you go back to our UI right here, to navigate back to our home page, we now see that we actually have our header. So that's not the same for our about, but let's fix it. We're going to do the same thing. So when I go back here, I'm going to go to our about.html, and what I'll do is to remove that. So I'll do the same thing, extends, and then shall inherit our base template, and then I'll provide block content. So it's actually going to have the same content, and what we shall do is provide an h1. So this h1 is actually going to be for our about page, and once we've done this, then we shall do the same thing for our services page. So I'm just going to come and extend our base.html layout. I'll provide block tags here, and then it's going to be block content and then block content. And now that we have this, then the next thing is actually going to be to provide the content that's actually going to be in between here. So I'll provide an h1, and this is actually going to be for our services page. So now that we have this, we expect that we're going to navigate to different parts of the application easily. Now I'm going to save, and when I save, I'm going to head over to our Chrome, and when I refresh, we now see that the app page as well has the header as well as the footer. Now let's go to our about, let's go to services. The same thing happens. So when you go to our home page, the same thing happens. We actually have the content as well as our header. Now the beauty with template inheritance, you can even pass variables dynamically. For example, let's say each Django template is actually going to have a different title. So what we can do is to provide that within our base.html. So I'm going to go to base.html. Let me close this for now. And all I can do is to change our title. So let's say we have a title dynamically from each view that's rendering a template. All we can do is to change the title. So let's say we didn't want this to be a title just. So let me change this. I'm just going to provide our VAR and then provide our title. So let's say we have each view having our title. So when I go to views.py, all I can do is to provide our views within our context. So I can just come right in here and say that we're going to have our title, and this title is going to be, let's say, our home page. Now we can do the same thing for our about page. So I'm just going to go ahead and create our context dictionary. And this context dictionary is actually going to be having, so right here we shall actually have our title, because then we want it dynamic. So you can just come and say about page and then provide our context within our render function. So I'll just come and provide our context. I'll do the same thing for our service based page. So I'll come and provide our context and then go ahead and create this context. So I'm just going to copy this and then paste it, but then our title will be different. So in this case we shall have services page. So I'm going to save this, and when I save this, when we go back right to our Google Chrome and I refresh, we now see that our home page has a different title. So when we go to our about page, we shall have the about page as our title. When we go to our services page, the same thing will happen. We shall have a dynamic title for this template. So in this video, we've been able to actually look at templates which help us to bring data from our view functions and display it in dynamic ways in our HTML. We've also looked at HTML inheritance or layout inheritance that can allow us to share the same layout across different pages. If you like this video, what you can do for me is to like and also subscribe to the channel. Make this video go to as many people as possible by clicking that like button. Thank you for watching, guys, and see you in the next video. Bye.